we're in the studio today, and I'm just taking a little break from making wreaths, which I've been doing for a couple of weeks now as my Christmas orders go out to my customers. So I'm going to be trying to teach Steve how to make a wreath, one of the most popular wreaths that I sell, which is a more classical style wreath, lots of blending, lots of different materials, a more symmetrical shape, and a very nice full wreath. So it could be a little bit of a challenge just to get this kind of shape. It can be a little bit of a challenge to get used to it, to be able to finesse it. So we'll see how we do.
Yeah, and she's trying. That's the key word. She's going to try to teach me.
Well, it depends.
It's going to be harder than breathing.
It depends what kind of student you decide to be.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Well, it depends on what kind of teacher you're going to be.
All right, so we're going to be using this frame today. Steve is actually my husband. Steve is very much a part of the farm and helping to assist me gathering materials and things as I need. So you know that I don't always use frames like this.
I do. Yeah, Marie tends to do a lot of real beautiful organic frames where it's willow branches and you kind of weave them in. I help cut the willow branches. Sometimes I help make the frames. And
he's my ditch diver.
Yeah, they're a lot more challenging. The other challenging piece is my day job. I teach students high school. So I'm probably going to be a terrible student.
So hi, Steve, students who are watching.
Any of my students are watching, hello.
You gotta give your students a shout out, as they say.
And remember, make sure you like and subscribe. But Marie's going to attempt. I've never made a wreath before in my entire life. I've done some frames with her, wood frames, but I've never made a wreath with a wire frame and done any of the greenery that you see on the table here. So it's her project that she's got to try to make this happen today.
I thought this could be fun, so
let's do it.
See how this goes.
I'm excited.
Either way, there will be a lot of learning today.
Yes, let's get going.
So this frame is what we're going to use today, and the reason for this is partly just because it's symmetrical. Mm-hmm. So when I'm using hand woven wreaths, wreath frames, when I'm using hand woven wreath frames, I deal a lot more with not quite a perfect circle. And that can make it really challenging for you to get like a nice even shape and evenness all around in your wreath, which is the look we're going for today. So the nice thing about that is I feel okay. I send these out for this one style wreath we're going to make today, which is basically the wreath that goes out to my customers. It's one of the most popular designs that they're buying, and it's a more traditional, full, all-around looking wreath. I'm okay with using this wreath because they tend to bring these wreath frames back to me. These are reusable and they last a long time.
Kind of neat.
So,
and that's one of our mantras on the farm is reusable.
Well, that's the thing, because you know that, and I think a lot of viewers know that. But if you don't, we actually try to basically get everything we can from our farm or incredibly local to us. And I love to try out new ways to do flowers that are completely compostable. So this would be an exception to what I do. It's also going to be giving a lot more strength. So sometimes when you're making a really big wreath, you just need a little bit more strength than sometimes rigidity. The willow. Yeah, so there's a few reasons why we're going to be doing that.
So what do I do first? I got the frame. What do I do with this frame?
So that brings us to our next little bit of material here, and this is paddle wire. Is basically like malleable wire. It's fairly strong and has a nice memory. So we're going to be using this to tie moss onto our frame today. And again, I'm using this. I actually can reuse the frames with the moss for many years, but I'm also choosing this for you today where I might opt to use jute or something more compostable. And that's just because this is so much easier to work with. If you're new to wreath making, this actually will hold and you don't have to keep applying a lot of tension the way that happens with some of the other string materials. So it's just one less thing for you to learn. So if you want to just tie that on to the inside or the outside of your frame, just sort of stick that on there. Yep. Perfect. And then we're going to put that, just move that out of your way. And you're going to take
to the center.
Yeah. And we've got a bucket of moss here. Okay, now this moss is gathered from our own property. What you're going to do is you're going to load inside the frame, inside the curved part of this frame. You see how this part is curved?
Okay, so how come I'm doing on the curved and not the concave. How come I'm doing the concave, not the convex? Use proper terminology here.
Tricky words for me.
Yeah. So the curve. How come I'm putting the moss on this curved side and not the other side? Why?
Yeah.
Is there a side to this?
We'll kind of almost come to that, but this was designed. These frames were actually, the way I've used these frames is actually for doing funeral and sympathy wreaths, where you're loading your frame actually with flat floral oasis with flower foam, and then you're wrapping with like a plastic. So they were designed to hold the whatever substrate you're putting in. So we're going to do that.
A cup, like a cup or a vessel.
And I'll also kind of get to the rest of the reasons why I choose to do it this way. So what you're going to do is just load your frame. You can go fairly snugly. It'll make it easier later when I show you some tricks at the very end. It helps if you've kind of got your moss a little bit fuller. And you can just load the whole thing up. So we scavenge or forage the moss just from our own property. And you don't necessarily have to use moss, but for what we're doing, it really helps to add a little bit more sparkle to the wreath, which you'll see at the very end. So we're just careful when we're gathering. You can actually farm moss. So if you are looking to use moss, you can just keep an eye on where it's coming from to make sure that it's more sustainable. And for us, we just carefully gather it. We tend to let's take some and leave some and try not to take too much so that it can regrow itself.
I'm just finding some extra moss here. I felt a little short. Tuck some in. There we go. So I got my moss in.
Perfect.
Now let's start building the wreath. Do I just put some hook cones? Not yet? Okay.
First we're actually just gonna take the wire and you're gonna start wrapping around. You're gonna just go around like this. So you're gonna take the wire and just go around. You don't have to do too much.
Every few inches or every little bit.
Every couple of inches. You don't have to do too much because the moss you got is nice and chunky, so it's holding itself together.
So every kind of couple fingers apart.
Just to fasten the moss in there, so it's not going to go anywhere. You're just going to go around and around till you get back to the beginning.
I think I can do that. I'm wearing black gloves today, not because I'm a wimp, but this spruce that I'm going to put in this wreath is very prickly and makes your hands hurt. And I know this because I used to be in the logging business and involved with forests, and so I decided to wear gloves. I just don't want to have sore hands for the next week.
Oh, like all the florists, all the poor florists right now? Yeah.
Marie's in a group where there's a bunch of florists from around the world, and they're all sharing their horror stories of hands. Even Marie herself, when she comes in the evening there, I feel pretty bad for her. Fingers look terrible, the tips of her fingers.
Yeah, we don't walk around with beautiful nails, that's for sure.
So
the worst part is all the prickles from thorns and things, because they get dirty and then they get it's almost like they're festering, and then your fingers get really hot and sort of infected. It's kind of awful.
Okay, I'm back to the beginning.
To the beginning? Okay, awesome. My table off. So I'm gonna get a cutter.
Okay.
Just to make this simple, I don't always do this. If it's me, I actually just keep going. So that I don't have to take this extra step. But we're just gonna cut this off.
Okay.
And you're just gonna tie that into the
metal frame.
Just tie that into the metal. Go around a few times.
I'm just tying it into the metal, and I'm just going to wrap it around a few times.
The nice thing with doing this is that then if we were to reuse this frame, this now can be reused for years.
Okay, and if
we could take the material off, but leave this wire with this moss on this frame, and I actually just will soak the moss and just reuse it. It's
cool.
wonderful.
So you don't just reuse the frame; you actually reuse the moss.
Yes,
too.
Yeah,
that's neat.
Which I think is important. It's important to be reusing in general. But
there you go, making a Christmas wreath. Pretty quick.
It also reduces our impact.
Beautiful. So. You can get spray paint and spray it different colors. And
I actually think this is beautiful, and I maybe I might not spray paint it, but I would maybe display. And I sometimes do have these hanging around my studio. They're pretty like this.
You should see what's in our house.
All right, so that's part 1 of teaching a newbie how to make a wreath. After we finished filming, I realized that I had so much good design information that I was sharing in this one, and I didn't want to chop parts out of it, so I decided to turn it into a 3-part video series on teaching the newbie how to make a wreath. So make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss the rest. The next part is on choosing foliage that works well together. It's a really important one because foliage is what ultimately makes the wreath. So that's one you don't want to miss. Hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks so much for watching and see you next time.